Don't do this." Daniel's voice cracked through the marble courtroom, echoing off the walls as Ellie clung to the edge of the judge's wheelchair. "I promise I can fix you, ma'am. Please, just don't send my daddy away." Gasps rippled. Reporters shoved forward. The gavel struck, once, twice, too late. Now let me tell you how this incredible story unfolded. But before you continue, take a quiet second. Become part of this journey. Subscribe. Not just to follow a channel, but to stay connected. Share your heart in the comments and tell me where you're watching from, because your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's begin. The morning smelled of rain and burnt coffee. Daniel Reeves wrestled a torn grocery bag up the steps of his Bronx walk-up, one arm balancing Ellie's backpack, the other gripping a carton of eggs he couldn't afford to drop. He'd been late for work again. Construction hours didn't wait for single fathers. Inside their apartment, paint peeled near the window. Ellie's drawings, bright worlds of stick-figure families and sunshine, hid the cracks. "Dad," she said, brushing toast crumbs from her fingers, "will you ever get Mom's old truck running again?" "Soon as I land a steady job," Daniel answered, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. That truck's our ticket to better days. But he'd said that for a year. Across town, Judge Camille Porter rolled herself through the glass doors of the Manhattan Criminal Courthouse. The motor of her titanium wheelchair hummed softly. Paralyzed from the waist down after a hit-and-run 2 years earlier, she'd rebuilt her life through law, discipline, and a spine of steel. She kept emotion tucked away. Neat, silent, unreachable. Her clerks whispered about how she never smiled. They didn't know that each morning she stared at her reflection, asking what kind of justice could still come from a body that refused to move. That same afternoon, Daniel's world tilted. A delivery from the construction site had gone missing, a shipment of copper wire worth thousands. His name was on the sign-out sheet. No one cared that he'd stayed late fixing a coworker's mistake. By evening, 2 NYPD officers stood outside his door. Ellie peeked from behind the couch as they cuffed him. "Daddy?" "It's okay, honey," Daniel whispered. "Tell Mrs. Carter next door you'll stay with her tonight." As they led him away, neighbors murmured through half-open doors. Rain hammered the street. 3 nights later, Camille Porter's docket flashed a new case. State v. Reeves, Daniel. Grand larceny. She glanced at the file. Just another name. Another crime. But something about the arrest photo held her. The eyes. Clear. Tired. Kind. When the arraignment began, Daniel stood between 2 guards, wrists bruised. Camille's voice, firm but even, filled the room. "Mr. Reeves, you're accused of theft exceeding $20,000. Do you have representation?" He shook his head. "Public defender, ma'am. I didn't steal anything." "You can address me as Your Honor," she corrected, but the tremor in his tone caught her off guard. From the back bench, Ellie's small voice broke protocol. "He didn't do it. My daddy's a good man." Security moved toward her, but Camille lifted a hand. The child's defiance, so pure it hurt, stirred something buried. The proceeding moved quickly. Bail denied. Evidence pending. Yet, as Daniel turned to leave, his gaze met hers for a fraction of a second, and Camille felt the strange pull of recognition. That night, she couldn't sleep. Rain streaked her apartment window on the Upper West Side. The city lights blurred in silver reflections. She remembered another night. Sirens, twisted metal, her legs trapped, a stranger's voice promising help. A man who disappeared before she could thank him. Could it be him? No, impossible. Across the river, Ellie prayed beside Mrs. Carter's couch. "God, please help Daddy. Make the lady who can't walk see he's good. When Daniel phoned from Rikers the next morning, his voice cracked through static. Ellie, be brave, okay? Tell the truth when they ask you anything. I will, Daddy. I'll make her understand. And somewhere, deep inside the prison phone's echo, Daniel realized the only person who still believed in him was 8 years old. If you've ever watched someone carry the blame just because they had no one powerful to defend them, you already know what injustice feels like. Maybe that's reason enough to stay with this story, because truth sometimes needs witnesses who don't look away. 3 weeks passed before Daniel Reeves saw sunlight without bars slicing through it. His public defender had filed a motion to reduce bail, arguing there was no solid proof he'd stolen anything. The request had landed, again, on Judge Camille Porter's desk. Camille's clerk watched her study the file longer than usual. You've looked at that case 3 times, Judge. Something about it. She closed the folder. Just making sure I don't miss anything, she said, masking the odd current twisting in her chest. Later that afternoon, Daniel was brought into her courtroom again, thinner now, the stubble on his jaw uneven. When the guard guided him to the table, he nodded once toward the bench, respectful, wary. Mr. Reeves, Camille began, you've maintained your innocence. The prosecution's evidence remains circumstantial. Her voice softened just a shade. I'm granting conditional release. You'll wear an ankle monitor and report weekly. Daniel blinked as if he'd misheard. Your Honor, thank you. Her gavel came down once, brisk. Don't thank me yet. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Ellie broke from Mrs. Carter's hand, running straight into her father's arms. He hugged her tight, whispering into her hair, We're gonna be okay, Peanut. We'll fix this. Behind them, through the glass doors, Camille watched the reunion. A muscle tightened in her jaw. She remembered the way Ellie had shouted in her courtroom, how her small voice had pierced something numb inside her. That evening, while reviewing other cases, Camille's phone buzzed. It was her brother, Marcus, a surgeon in Boston. You're still burning yourself out, Cammy. You ever gonna take that therapy seriously? I have physical therapy 3 times a week, she said. I'm talking about the other kind, he replied softly. The kind that helps you forgive yourself for surviving. She ended the call. Forgiveness. What a foreign word. The next morning, a knock at her apartment door startled her. When she opened it, Ellie Reeves stood there, clutching a crumpled bouquet of bodega daisies. Ma'am, Your Honor, I wanted to thank you for letting Daddy come home, she said, eyes wide, voice trembling with courage. He didn't do anything bad. Camille froze, searching for words. How did you find my address? The doorman said you live here, Ellie answered honestly. I asked nice. Before Camille could respond, Daniel appeared at the end of the hallway, panting. Ellie, you can't just... Your Honor, I'm so sorry, she didn't mean... Camille raised a hand. It's all right, Mr. Reeves. She's brave. Ellie smiled shyly. You're really pretty, she said. I saw you on the news once. The judge blinked, caught off guard by the child's unfiltered kindness. Thank you, sweetheart. Daniel's cheeks reddened. We'll get out of your way. But Camille surprised herself. Wait, if you're here, maybe you both could help me understand something. The file says you logged out the stolen wire at 4:07 p.m. Where were you at that time? Daniel frowned. On the site, but not near that shipment. I was patching the concrete forms. Check the CCTV at the East Gate. She made a note. The DA's office said that camera was malfunctioning. Then someone made sure it was, Daniel said quietly, because I didn't touch that wire. For a long moment, silence filled the hallway, except for the hum of her wheelchair motor. Camille studied his face, tired, honest, strangely familiar. "Mr. Reeves," she said finally, "if what you're telling me is true, someone framed you, and that means I let an innocent man sit in a cell." He met her eyes. "You didn't have all the facts. That's not on you." That night, Camille lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The words, "not on you," echoed like a challenge. In 2 years of paralysis, no one had spoken to her without pity, until him. She opened her laptop, pulling the case file again. As she scrolled through the police report, her breath caught on one line. Responding officer, Lieutenant Ross Porter, her cousin, the same one who'd been at the scene of her accident. A slow, sick realization crept through her. Could Ross have known Daniel before? Was this more than coincidence? Across the city, Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, ankle monitor blinking green. Ellie slept beside him, her small hand clutching his shirt. He whispered, "We'll get through this. I'll clear my name, and you'll never cry over courtrooms again." In her apartment, Camille whispered to herself, "Or maybe I'll find out I've been protecting the wrong people all along." Sometimes the truth hides behind the faces we trust most. And if you've ever realized justice can be bent by blood, by guilt, by silence, you know how hard it is to keep believing in it. Stay, because what comes next decides who any of us become, and did Ellie really make the judge walk again? 2 nights later, Judge Camille Porter wheeled into the courthouse long after midnight. The marble corridors were empty except for the echo of her tires. She'd pulled every file linked to Lieutenant Ross Porter. 37 cases, 6 of them questioned for evidence tampering. Her stomach tightened. When she opened Daniel Reeves's case log, she saw an unsigned statement slipped between pages. Camera 4. Restored by Officer Ross Porter, 4:10 p.m. That timestamp was after the supposed theft. Someone had lied under oath. Her hands trembled on the rims of her wheels. "Dear God," she whispered. It was him. Across the Bronx, Daniel's ankle monitor beeped. He sat up in bed, half dreaming, half terrified. A black sedan idled outside his window, engine humming. He grabbed his phone, but before he could dial, headlights flared and the car sped off. The next morning, Camille called him. "Mr. Reeves, Daniel, I need to speak with you, not at the courthouse." "Judge Porter, everything okay?" "No, and that's why we can't talk on record." They met that evening at a tiny Harlem diner, the kind with neon signs and endless coffee refills. Camille maneuvered her chair into the booth. Daniel instinctively moved a stool out of her way. She hated needing help, but the way he did it, quiet, respectful, didn't sting. "I think your arrest was staged," she said, lowering her voice, "by an officer connected to my family." Daniel blinked. "Your family?" "My cousin, Ross Porter." The name hit like a hammer. "That's the cop who booked me." Camille nodded. "I'm going to reopen the investigation, but I can't do it through normal channels. If I file it openly, the department will bury it." Daniel leaned forward. "So, what do you need from me?" "Proof. Anything you saw that day. Anyone who might back you up." He exhaled. "There's one guy, Luis, the forklift operator. Said he saw someone near the wire before it went missing." "Find him," she said. For the first time, he noticed the fatigue in her eyes. "You're risking your job." "I'm risking more than that," she murmured. That night, rain lashed the diner windows. As they parted, a dark SUV pulled from the curb, following Daniel's truck through the slick streets of Harlem. He didn't notice. Camille did. She whispered to herself, "Ross, what are you doing?" The next morning, a city inspector found her apartment door ajar. Papers scattered, laptop gone. Inside, a note taped to the mirror read, "Stop digging." Camille felt her chest tighten, rage and fear blending. She called Daniel. "They broke in. You and Ellie need to leave the city tonight." "I can't run again," he said. "If I do, they'll call it guilt. Then meet me at the courthouse. We'll face them together." By dusk, sirens wailed downtown. Camille rolled into her chambers. Daniel burst in minutes later, Ellie gripping his hand. She looked smaller than ever. "Daddy, what's happening?" "Something bad, Peanut, but we're going to make it right." The elevator chimed. Lieutenant Ross Porter stepped out, raincoat dripping. "Cammy," he said, voice calm. "You should have called me. Now you're making a mess. You framed an innocent man," she snapped. "Why?" "For you," he shouted. "You lost everything after that crash, your legs, your confidence. I wanted to give you a clean courtroom, a hero case, something to make them respect you again." Daniel stared, stunned. "You ruined my life so she'd look good?" Ross pulled his gun. Ellie screamed. "You don't understand," he said, eyes wild. "I can fix this if you just—" "Put it down," Camille ordered. Her voice carried that same courtroom authority, but underneath it was something else. Grief. Ross hesitated. In that heartbeat, Daniel moved, shoving Ellie behind a desk. The gun fired. The shot cracked through the marble hall, echoing like thunder. Ross staggered backward, disbelief on his face, and dropped the weapon. The bullet had ricocheted, hit his shoulder. Camille's hands shook as she called 911. "Officer down," she said, tears streaking, "and arrest him for obstruction, falsifying evidence, and attempted murder." When paramedics carried Ross away, he whispered, "I just wanted you to walk again." She turned away. "I already am." That night, in the empty courtroom, Daniel looked at her. "You saved my life." Camille shook her head. "No, your daughter did. She believed before anyone else did." Ellie stepped forward, eyes shimmering. "Does that mean Daddy can come home now?" Camille smiled. Small, genuine. "Yes, sweetheart. Justice finally caught up." Winter settled over New York like a held breath. Snow drifted between skyscrapers and melted on the courthouse steps, leaving the city washed clean and new. Judge Camille Porter hadn't taken the bench in a month. The media had turned her name into headlines. Hero judge exposes police corruption. But the victory tasted like metal. She sat in the quiet of her physical therapy room, hands gripping the parallel bars, muscles trembling. The therapist's voice echoed faintly. "Again, Judge Porter, you've got this." She took one more step, then another. The third one broke her balance and she caught herself on the bars, breath ragged. "Why won't you work?" she whispered to her legs. A knock at the door interrupted her frustration. When it opened, Daniel Reeves stood there, holding a small bouquet of carnations. Beside him, Ellie bounced on her toes. "You have visitors," the therapist said with a grin, excusing herself. Camille blinked back tears. "You two shouldn't have come all the way." "We wanted to," Daniel said. "The DA dropped everything. They even offered me my job back. I wanted to tell you in person." Ellie ran to her. "I told you, ma'am. I told you I'd make you walk again." Camille smiled, lowering herself so their eyes met. "You did, sweetheart. But I'm still trying." Ellie frowned, thinking hard. "Daddy says sometimes walk again doesn't mean with legs. Sometimes it means with your heart." The room fell silent except for the hum of the heater and the faint buzz of the city outside. Camille's eyes softened. "Your daughter's wiser than most adults I know." Daniel smiled. "She gets that from her mom, the faith part. I lost it for a while." Camille turned back to the bars. "Faith is hard to hold when everything that kept you standing is gone." "Maybe," Daniel said gently, "but sometimes we find new legs. People who carry us until we can stand again." The words settled between them. Simple, honest, impossible to ignore. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Ellie visited often. He brought stories from his construction site, jokes that made Camille laugh until her shoulders shook. Ellie decorated her therapy room with drawings, one of Camille walking under a bright New York sky, another of all three of them holding hands. Slowly, something shifted. With each step, Camille's muscles awakened, but it was the warmth in that small family that carried her forward. She began to imagine futures she'd buried, dinners that weren't eaten alone, laughter that didn't echo off courtroom walls. 1 month later. The courtroom was packed again, but this time for a ceremony. Cameras flashed as Camille was honored for her integrity. Daniel and Ellie sat in the front row. When the applause faded, Camille rolled forward to the podium. Then, gripping the rails of her chair, she rose. The crowd gasped. Her movements were shaky, but she stood. Ellie leapt to her feet, clapping wildly. "You're walking!" Camille laughed through tears, only because someone small and stubborn reminded me how. Daniel met her gaze across the room. In that moment, the distance between judge and defendant disappeared. They were just two people who had saved each other in different ways. Afterward, outside the courthouse, snow drifted again. Daniel walked beside her as she took careful steps down the ramp. "Where to now?" he asked. She looked up at the sky. "Anywhere that isn't alone." He offered his arm. She took it. Ellie ran ahead, laughing, her voice echoing down the steps. For the first time in 2 years, Camille didn't think about the accident, the paralysis, or the fear of falling. She thought about what it meant to choose hope even when you can't yet see it. If you've ever watched someone fall and still find the grace to help them stand again, you already know what this story is really about. And if that truth moved you even a little, stay. Because stories like this remind us that mercy and love still matter. Thank you for staying with me until the very last moment of this story. If something in it, even a single glance, a breath, a heartbeat, reached you, then this story did what it was meant to do. Every view, every heartbeat that listens, keeps this little world of stories alive. So, before you go, take a quiet second. Become part of this journey. Subscribe, not just to follow a channel, but to stay connected to the next story waiting to speak to your heart. The next one goes even deeper. More truth, more love, more healing. And it's already waiting for you. Your next story begins right here.